Hi, I'm Marnie. I'm your Chief Champagne fan here at Bubble and Flute. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different, and instead of writing about champagne, I'm going to talk about it with you. So I'm a little bit nervous because it's kind of weird looking at yourself and listening to yourself back. But I think the champagne's going to take the edge off the nerves a little bit. And I did decide to start today with a really good long-term friend to help make me feel really comfortable. So Veuve Clicquot is like my first champagne love. And I think that's because it was probably the first champagne that I ever really got into drinking. But it's actually stood the test of time. And I still enjoy it as one of my go-to faves to this day. And it's not just because the label is my favourite colour, yellow, and it's bright and looks like sunshine, and being an Aussie is nothing like summer and sunshine to make you feel happy, but I actually also genuinely enjoy the blend that they use in their yellow label non-vintage champagne. Now, if you spend a bit of time with me on the blog, you'll know that I often talk about the grapes that are used to make the champagne. And I do that because I think they're the factor that is the greatest influencer in what people like in champagne and what they don't. So I've had friends that'll go, oh, I don't like this house, or oh my God, I really love this house. How can champagne be so different? And I find that when you sit down, you break down what champs they like and the champs they don't like, and you look at the grape composition, they'll generally have a bias one way or the other. In other words, they really like Pinot champagnes or Chardonnay champagne. So there's 3 grapes that go into champagne. Again, heap information about this on the blog, but quite briefly, they are Pinot Noir and Pinot Meunier, which are both red grapes, and Chardonnay, which is a white grape. So my personal bias is for a Pinot. So give me a heavy Pinot champs any day of the week and I will love you for it. Not to say I don't like the Chardonnay champagnes, I do. They're probably a little bit more time and a place for me, whereas anywhere, anytime, I'll pick up a champagne that's got majority Pinot Noir in it and be happy as a pig in poo. So the thing that is the same about these 2 champagnes that we're going to talk about today, and that's the yellow label, and then this brand new release from the House of Veuve Clicquot, which is called the Extra Brut Extra Old. So I'm going to start by talking about what's the same, and then we'll talk about what's different. So what's the same in both of these champagnes is the blend, and the blend being the grapes that are used to make the champagne. So yellow label, consistently non-vintage champagne will always have about 50-55% Pinot Noir, 15 to 20% Pinot Meunier, and around, what the difference is I think it's like something about 30-35% Chardonnay. So high Pinot Noir. What's different about these 2 champagnes is 2 other key factors, and one of them is the dosage, and dosage refers to the amount of sugar they add to the champagne at the end of the process, and the other thing that is the different is the percentage of reserve wines. So for all non-vintage champagnes, there's generally a proportion of reserve wines that go into the champagne, as well as a blend of a base year or the most recent years of harvest. So for Veuve Clicquot yellow label, the reserve wines represent about 25 to 35. Sometimes you'll get 40 or 45% reserve wine. For the Extra Brut Extra Old, it's 100% reserve wine. And quite specifically, those are reserve wines are wines that are held back from a particular vintage to be blended into champagnes down the track. So particularly, I'm going to read this off the label so I don't stuff it up. The vintages that are included in the Extra Brut Extra Old are 1988, so you're going back like 30 years there, 1996, which was an epic year, the best year for champagne in the last however long, 2006, 2008, which is probably the current release vintage champagnes of 2008, but it's also shaping up to be an epic year, 2009 and 2012. So 100% reserve wines go into this, to the Extra Old Extra Brut, and much lower dosage. And so, to be honest, when I see these 2 wines side by side, I did probably expect from the Extra Brut Extra Old, because of the old back vintages, I did suspect it would be probably a much different colour. It would be much more golden. Generally, aged champagne or non-vintage champagnes that have a high percentage of aged reserve wines included in them will have a much deeper golden yellow colour, whereas non-vintages with more recent vintages will be a sort of a pale straw colour. So I'm a little surprised to see that the colour is quite as comparable there as it is. Perhaps a slightly older, slightly more golden, but it's a bit hard to tell with this background. So, but the real test is in the tasting. So, I mean, I know the champagne inside out, so there's not going to be too many surprises here, but having a taste now, just so I can compare that to the Extra Brut, Extra Old. So, quick sniff. I'm not a wine wanker that sits here and says, I smell golden hay under the high noon sun, because I think a lot of tasting notes are just an exercise in creative writing. You will get certain elements, I'll be able to sit there and know that there's red berries versus citrusy Chardonnay flavours, but I'm probably not much more accurate than that. I don't think you need to be, because at the end of the day it comes down to you like it or you don't like it. So, but I do like to have a quick sniff, and particularly with this one I'm expecting exactly what I'm getting, which is because of the aged vintages that go into this, or the older wines that are in this, that will always give a really obvious honeyed smell to the champagne. So, unless you've got zero sense of smell, you really probably will be able to pick that up. It's not terribly challenging. You'll smell it instantly and it just smells richer. And if you really break that down, it's more of a honey kind of flavour. So in terms of taste, the other thing again that you would expect is, because of the low dosage in it, I was probably expecting it to be quite a chalky, salty flavour. I tend to find with low dosage or zero dosage champagnes, you find you have a couple of sips and you feel really thirsty, and that's because it is really has that salty flavour because of the no sugar that's added. The reason that Veuve Clicquot say they did a low dosage with the Extra Old reserve wines is because they felt that let the reserve wines speak for themselves, and it didn't need the sugar to be added to it. So, and I can see that there is an element of that salty edge to it, but not as profound as I've probably noticed it in other low dosage champagnes. And the other thing is, it's a really, really light bubble. So, it just feels a bit sherbety and fizzy for me. Sometimes you feel, I like it, I'm enjoying it, but you'll often feel that real bubble on your tongue. With this, it's probably more I'm getting a fizz or a sherbety sort of popping kind of, not popping, but it's just that really soft sherbety. I can't think of another word of describing it, but it's, look, it's really enjoyable. Would I serve this up to friends at a party on a Saturday night? No, because you'll probably find, because of the low dosage, people will find it will be a little bit polarizing. Definitely you'd stick to yellow label, but if you're having a special occasion and maybe a dinner party, and I'm thinking if you're having a dinner party, serve it after the entree. So if you're having a cheese platter, maybe nice rich creamy cheeses, and then having something like this before you go on to your main course will actually kind of cut through, because it's really quite clean and crisp because of the low dosage, and I think it'll cut through the creamy cheeses. Or the other thing is, if you're having seafood, oysters, I think it would go really, really beautifully with that kind of menu. So, you can sit and drink it on its own, but with something like this, which is quite specialised, it probably is more of a food wine than just a drinking wine. Trust me, I have plenty of champagnes in my kit bag that I drink for the sake of drinking it. It's not all about the food. But yeah, this one I'd probably more inclined to say you do want to mix it with a dinner party and a menu. So maybe after some cheeses, or whack on some oysters and some prawns and that sort of thing. Very Aussie, Aussie, Aussie. So all in all, I really like it. I enjoy it. It's really exciting to see something different coming out from the champagne houses. I drink a fair bit of champagnes. It does get a little bit boring going, oh, what can I try tonight? And a lot of the houses are being challenged by the grower champagnes to be more adventurous with their champagnes that they're releasing. And this, I think, is a fantastic example of that. So props to Veuve Clicquot for doing something different, and it does get the thumbs up from me. And yeah, if you're having a dinner party and you want to try something different in between your mains and your entrees, I'd highly recommend going out and grabbing a bottle of this. Pretty sure it's exclusive to Vintage Cellars in Australia. That's certainly the only place that I've seen it, and I did see a Facebook ad to suggest that. But yeah, it's about $135, $140 a bottle, which is probably about the same you'd pay for a vintage champagne. And even though this is I wouldn't call this a non-vintage, I'd say they'd call it a multi-vintage. So cheers, enjoy your Saturday night.